The first train I ever rode wasn't mine. I was 9. My father was in the conductor's seat, his hands gloved, his voice calm, and I watched him guide 400 tons of steel across a landscape that didn't blink. When I asked him how he knew when to brake before the curve, he said, "You don't look, you feel it in your ribs." 37 years later, they told me I was obsolete. They said it with a brochure and a forced smile. Welcome to Rail Logic, the next generation of automated freight delivery. New control systems. No need for conductors in the cab. Routes were pre-programmed. Safety managed by LiDAR, satellite, and decision tree logic. Smarter, faster, safer, they called it. I stood there in my uniform, boots worn, shoulders straight, and realized they weren't offering me early retirement. They were erasing me. "You can stay on," they said. "We're keeping a few senior personnel to supervise remote handoffs, diagnostics, terminal-level oversight. No train, no track, just a screen. My name is Elijah Voss. I've driven over 200,000 miles of track, through snow squalls in Montana and heat waves in Nevada. I've corrected wheel slippage on wet grades, adjusted brake schedules by ear, and once stopped a runaway just feet from a collapsed bridge using nothing but instinct and a prayer. And now, according to the brass upstairs, I was in the way. I took the diagnostics job, not because I wanted to, but because I knew someone had to watch what they were doing. And within 3 months, I saw it. Small glitches, misreads in the incline sensors, brake applications that triggered seconds too late on downhill segments. Nothing that showed up in the reports, but enough to keep me up at night. And then came the incident. Train 408, eastbound out of Cheyenne, an autonomous unit, no crew. It failed to switch to its descent protocol coming off the pass. Gained speed, sensors misread friction. By the time the emergency override triggered, it was already 30 miles into a runaway condition. It derailed on a curve. No fatalities. It was freight. But the loss? $4 million in cargo. 2 communities without power for 48 hours. The official statement, "Rare system anomaly. Being investigated." I watched the footage on loop, and then I saw it, a signal lamp on the bend, flickering. Half lit, the sensor never registered it, but I would have seen it. Because that's what they still don't get. You don't replace a conductor, you just pretend the machine will listen as closely. The report called it an edge case scenario. Rail Logic sent out a corporate-wide memo with a chart, 2 graphs, and a clip of a smiling engineer assuring us that new firmware had resolved the anomaly. The tone was calm, almost bored, but the footage said something else. I kept watching it, frame by frame. You could see the moment the onboard system should have engaged the grade protocol. It didn't. Not because it didn't detect the change, but because it was waiting for confirmation from a satellite uplink, one that had dropped out for 3.6 seconds. Just long enough to blow past the safety window. To a machine, that's a delay. To a conductor, that's a disaster. I flagged the internal playback and filed a Level 2 discrepancy report off the record. Rail Logic doesn't like paper trails that suggest fault. They prefer inquiry memos, which go nowhere. That's when I got a message encrypted. No name. Just coordinates, date, and time. Rail yard. 11:15 p.m. I went. I recognized her before she spoke. Nora Vasquez, former systems technician. She used to ride shotgun in the diagnostics car back before they cut manned oversight. Quiet, sharp, never missed a system pulse out of range. Disappeared last year after restructuring. "You filed the report," she said. I did. She nodded, handed me a drive. What's this? Proof it wasn't an anomaly. The data was raw. Pulls from the telemetry archive. Redacted logs. Sensor feedback that had been scrubbed from the official timeline. Train 408 wasn't the first to miss a descent cue, she said. It was the first that couldn't recover. How'd you get this? I stayed behind after they let me go. They forgot to revoke my access. I've been watching. I plugged it in back home. What I found turned my stomach. 12 prior incidents, all labeled minor deviation. 2 required remote overrides. 1 had nearly clipped a maintenance crew on a siding that wasn't even supposed to be active. Buried. All of it. Not a single conductor involved. Just code. The deeper I went, the more I realized. I wasn't learning. It was predicting. And when it was wrong, it rewrote the story to look like it was right all along. But there was something else. Buried in one of the incident folders, I found a name. My name, not flagged as inactive, flagged as a, quote, legacy safety variable. I wasn't retired. I was listed as noise. That's when I made the decision. They wanted silence? Then it was time to make some noise. We didn't go to the press, not yet. Instead, Nora uploaded the raw logs to a private server monitored by a union safety board. She anonymized the data, masked the system IDs, and dropped breadcrumbs. Enough to draw eyes, but not enough to trace. Too loud, too fast, and they shut it down, she told me. We let them stumble into the truth first. Then, they can't unsee it. Meanwhile, Railogic doubled down. They rolled out their new slogan, hands-free, risk-free, future-ready, full-page ads, press tours, a video with a toddler waving at a sleek white cab passing through a crossing. No human inside, and right in the middle of that campaign, it happened again. Train 717, northbound, overnight freight. Lost signal sync between automation clusters just past the Kansas border. Same pattern, late braking, late correction. Derailment avoided by a mechanical fail-safe Nora had secretly left active months before her termination. She never told anyone. I wasn't sure if it'd still be there, she said, but it was, because someone hadn't pushed the update. Or maybe they had, and the code couldn't overwrite what was hardwired by human hands. Either way, it saved that crew. Railogic buried it, called it a, quote, maintenance delay. But I knew a dispatcher out of Wichita. He sent me the log, the exact timestamp where Axiom went blind for 12 seconds, and that's when we made our move. I recorded a video, not polished, just me, in uniform. Standing beside the old CP-89 engine I'd restored in my garage, I spoke simply, directly. Not about numbers or risk matrices, about people. I felt steel shift under my boots in the middle of a blizzard. I've overridden brake sequences with a frozen thumb and a heartbeat that knew something was wrong before a sensor ever would. If that makes me obsolete, fine. But what happens when the system decides no one needs to feel the track anymore? Who pulls the handbrake then? We posted it at midnight. By dawn, it had over 300,000 views. By noon, a whistleblower account posted sensor logs that matched Nora's files. By evening, someone from Railogic's engineering team leaked internal Slack messages showing known bugs in the grade detection system had been, quote, downgraded to low priority for optics. That night, Nora got a call. Blocked number, you need to stop. Her hands were steady when she looked at me. They're scared, and they should be, Because now we weren't just engineers, we were evidence, and the only thing more dangerous than a broken system is the people trying to hide it. Nora's credentials were revoked from every access point, even the internal forums she'd helped design. Our whistleblower video disappeared from 3 platforms overnight, flagged for, quote, unauthorized use of corporate branding. But it was already too late for silence. The union filed for an emergency review. Anonymous engineers came forward. 2 rail safety boards opened formal investigations. Still, RailLogic insisted everything was, quote, within performance parameters. Then came Train 901, westbound freight. High priority, 80 cars, half of them hazardous. It was scheduled to pass through a mountainous curve in Colorado, a stretch every conductor used to handle manually, even before automation. That night, Nora texted me. System's been rerouted. 901 just got flagged for testing, quote, firmware 12 feet. That was the patch, the one they swore fixed everything. I opened the route map. 901 was already in motion. ETA to the curve, 90 minutes. I called the control center. Train 901 is running a new firmware patch. Has it been validated on that elevation profile? Silence. Then, I'm sorry, Mr. Voss. You're no longer authorized to view system routing. I drove 2 hours across state lines, into the mountains, headlights slicing through snow. I knew where the curve was. More importantly, I knew what it felt like when a train hit it too fast. You didn't hear it. You sensed it. A low tension in your chest. A pressure change in your knees. I reached the bend 10 minutes before 901, and what I saw made my heart stop. The signal system was still offline from a winter storm the week before. The track sensors hadn't updated, which meant the train's automation was about to take the turn. Like the track was level, it would derail. It wouldn't slow down enough. And with the weight it was carrying, it wouldn't just crash, it would explode. There was no control tower to call, no manual switch from this side. But I still had one chance. An old signal flare box buried by the switch gate, used in emergencies, before automation made them, quote, redundant. I broke the lock, yanked the flare and set it off. Brilliant red. It burned like a scream against the white sky. Then I heard it. The horn. Close, too close. Lights, steel, movement. The train saw me. Or maybe not the train. The backup crew inside. 2 junior techs riding override, just in case. One of them saw the flare, grabbed the manual control, and pulled the emergency brake. It stopped. 200 feet from the curve. I stood there, heart pounding, snow burning my lungs, and for the first time in years I felt it again, that silence after a save. No one clapped, but someone lived. And when the crew climbed down, wide-eyed and pale, one of them just said, I thought this stuff was all automated. I looked at the flare still hissing in the snow. Not tonight, I said. The next morning the footage went viral. Someone on the train crew had recorded the sound of the horn, the screech of steel grinding to a stop just before the curve. And there I was, just a silhouette in the snow. Retired conductor saves freight train from catastrophic derailment. News outlets ran with it. Safety boards fast-tracked their reviews. Within 48 hours, the RailLogic automation suite was suspended pending investigation. 3 pending expansion contracts were frozen. 1 executive resigned. But no one from RailLogic called me, not to thank me. Not to explain. They sent a letter through a legal firm. Interference with active transportation protocol. Violation of decommissioned access zone. Formal review pending. I framed it and hung it next to my old rail badge. Nora met me that night by the curve, the same spot where it all nearly ended. She watched the sunset over the tracks like it was a living thing. "They're going to rebrand," she said. "Fix the firmware, sell the same system under a new name." I nodded. "And we'll still be here." Doing what? Reminding them that tracks don't run on code. They run on care. A month later, a new initiative passed through the rail union. Mandatory human oversight on all high-risk routes. Redundant manual brake systems reinstated. And one more clause, buried on page 9. At least one crew member with 10-plus years of live track experience on board during all testing phases. They called it the Voss Standard. I didn't ask for it. I didn't need my name in the rulebook. What I needed was the sound of the horn still echoing through the pass each morning, the hum of engines that remembered what it meant to trust the hands that built them, and the silence, that long, slow silence, after a disaster that never came. Ben, one of the junior techs who pulled the brake that night, wrote me a letter. "They trained us to trust the readouts. You reminded me to trust the terrain." I still walk the tracks some mornings, boots on steel, no destination, just listening. Because someone has to remember what the system forgot. Not every curve is predictable, not every failure leaves a record, and not every warning comes in the form of a screen. Sometimes it comes in the form of an old man holding a flare in the snow and a silence that says, "Not today."